But I'd say more often than not lately, we've had people that have downloaded Power BI Desktop, they start playing around, they see how easy it is to use, and they start to try to put an enterprise level solution in place, and they're finding that it's not necessarily scaling, or they're having user adoption issues or issues with the data and things not blending. And so based on that feedback and some of the engagements that we've had with customers lately, what we wanted to do was host this webinar today to kind of talk more first about the benefits of business intelligence, which I think a lot of people are tuned into nowadays because most people are moving towards more of a BI solution, but more so on how to create an effective BI solution. And that's going to probably be the bulk of the presentation piece of our webinar today, because it's not just pulling up, Power BI on your desktop and plugging in an Excel workbook. There's a lot more that goes into it that you need to consider. So there's steps you need to take before you actually start to build anything within that tool. I'm going to give you an overview of Power BI, so I will go through a demonstration and show you some of the features. I'm also, based on common customer questions, going to have a little conversation about licensing, and I have one slide about Power BI embedded specifically because we've had a lot of questions from clients about that, given the change in the Microsoft strategy. And again, I'll do a demonstration of both desktop as well as Power BI via Office 365 and leave some time for Q&A. So again, as I had mentioned, the tools themselves, it's pretty easy to use. It's everything before that that's really the biggest challenge. And so typically when we go in and we work with clients on any of these initiatives, we really take a step back and start with their business objectives. And usually these will deal with financial targets, sales and marketing goals, maybe quality levels for customer service. In the education space, maybe there's going to be attendance targets or fundraising targets. In the manufacturing space, obviously targets for quality, less scrap and reuse within the system. On the retail space, they're looking at sales targets. And we're also seeing a greater question from clients on having business objectives about predicting future trends from historical patterns, which these tools are definitely adept at doing nowadays. You don't need to be a data scientist anymore to be able to do predictive modeling. However, the challenges that most businesses are facing is that they need to do more with less. You have less time, less money, less resources. And so these tools are really effective at helping you do that number crunching and present the data to you rather than working for that data and having to bring it together yourself. I think the other challenge that I'm finding is that people need to get information faster for both yourself and for others within the organization. Most organizations, I think, are starting to embrace and adopt the fact that they need to have more agility. Your customers are demanding things in more real time. Your stakeholders are demanding things in more real time. As information comes into your organization, you need to adjust business strategy in real time. And the challenge is that most companies are still stuck in manually compiling that data from different databases or sources or Excel spreadsheets. And so by the time you've gathered that data together, the market opportunity for you to make that business decision is past. So getting that information definitely faster for yourself and for people within your organization or even stakeholders outside of your organization is critical. Additionally, as I kind of just mentioned as well, most organizations do not have all data sitting in one nice little package silo. And so you might have CRM data from one database, you might have an ERP system somewhere, you might have systems that run things on your manufacturing line that might give you IoT data or statistics about how many widgets are being produced. And you might have other different types of payroll systems or payment systems that you need to integrate together. And not only do you need to integrate them together, but they're not necessarily all one centralized version of the truth. So for example, you might have John Smith in one database, Jay Smith in another database, and John spelled Jon Smith versus John Smith in a third database. And so how do you bring those together to understand that they're the same John Smith as you're looking at that client record? Finally, to that point, the quality of the data for decision making is usually a challenge as well. Again, going back to where people have been calling us in for initiatives, very often people will create some very beautiful looking dashboards using Power BI, and then they realize they're making bad business decisions because the data within them is either corrupt or invalid or duplicated or there's problems with it. So you really need that quality data for decision making as part of your overall business goals. And so obviously the opportunity for this, as most of you probably appreciate since you're on our webinar today, is business intelligence. where you can use this tool today now to bring together high volumes of varied data together. It's not just basic Excel or CSV files anymore. You have big data, you have unstructured data, you want real-time data, you have social media data. As I'd mentioned, there's data coming from IoT devices. So it's a diverse amount and usually higher volumes of data within your organization that you can easily bring together. Simplify it as reports and dashboards that you can present to end users. It helps reduce management complexity and discover the actual facts of the organization rather than making business decisions based on your gut feel. And most of these solutions, this solution in particular, allows you to have faster analysis with more real-time data in your organization without a lot of overhead cost of actually having that streaming real-time data within the solution itself. So I think we need to take one quick step back, though, and talk about what are we really trying to achieve through these business intelligence solutions. And our ultimate goal really is to create knowledge, because what you have today is data, which is a bunch of discrete objective facts about some sort of an event. You need to take that data and you need to connect it, categorize it, calculate it, potentially correct it to figure out things like the who, what, where, why, how many. And once you bring those relationships together, then you actually have information, which is that data with analyzed relationships and connections. Now we can take that information and we can use these tools to help contextualize it, compare it, look at the consequences, figure out the hows of that information, which then finally leads us to knowledge. And once we actually reflect upon that, then we're able to have more wisdom and understanding about our organization, our business, future trends, past historical items within the organization, which is really where we want to get. So I think one of the things people start getting not concerned about, but with these tools, they start looking, okay, well, I start putting more business intelligence in place, it's doing more predictive modeling, it's doing more things for me. Either I'm out of a job because I'm not needed anymore, but you still need that person and that human context to be able to reflect upon that data and knowledge to be able to bring wisdom to the organization. And so that helps with your real world decision making, and that brings the loop of information back into the organization such that you can continue this cycle of creating knowledge. And to be honest, to be a very agile, adaptive, and learning organization to compete in the business world of today, you really need to be able to have that knowledge and to be able to disseminate that knowledge in the organization. And so these BI tools are going to be able to give you that single, accurate, meaningful, and up-to-date view of key performance indicators. They're also key that they're easy analysis and exploration by non-technical personnel. And I think that's been one of the challenges of the earlier versions of some of the dashboards and analytics tools that have been presented to market, is that they were very difficult, not necessarily to build, because your end users are usually not builders, but even to understand, to figure out how to drill down, to figure out how to filter and manipulate that information. So a BI tool is really going to help you with that. Additionally, it helps you with not only daily decision making, but long-term strategic planning, because you're looking at current operational data, but you're also going to want to look at future trends and make sure those are linked to clear strategic goals within the organization. By having that information in more real time, you can take action when necessary, and you can look at trends and progression to be able to be proactive rather than reactive when you see something that's going awry within the organization. And it helps improve overall effectiveness and efficiency, as well as it really helps engage employees and managers and provides them with much more overall satisfaction in their daily work and in actually using these solutions. So we find really that there's 5 maturity levels of analytical capabilities within organizations. And I think most companies are more of a level 1 and level 2 organization. So they're typically in a stage of either reporting or analyzing those reports. And from a reporting standpoint, that's usually past, and not stale information in a bad way, but it's information that's happened already. So that would be the traditional, potentially putting an Excel workbook or Excel spreadsheet together, where you're aggregating information from a variety of sources so that you don't have to look at those disparate sources together. The analyzing phase then is when you kind of dive into that a little bit more to look at the root causes. Where we're seeing people move now, and what we're trying to help organizations do, is to get more into the real-time understanding and describing what's actually happening currently, and not currently like 2 days ago, but currently, literally right now, what's happening on my production line, what's happening in my organization, where's my financial position, what sales have closed as of 10 o'clock this morning, and be able to take immediate corrective action. More people, though, want to move into predicting to figure out what will happen, what's going to be my next market trend, when is that machine going to break down so that I can do proactive maintenance on it, such that you can take the best action. What's going to be really fascinating as this market continues to move forward, though, is as people start to get more into the predictive analytics, I think that there's becoming this more prescriptive opportunity for people and analytical capabilities where it doesn't even show you what could happen such that you have to figure that out what to do with it. It's going to give you options and opportunities for how you actually should respond to that. So it guides you down the path of actual dynamic correction. And I think as we continue to see the market move forward on BI, that's going to be one of the next trends that's going to be just absolutely fascinating and exciting to be able to watch and to see how these tools continue to evolve towards that. So when you actually work to sit down and to create a BI solution, again, there's a couple steps you need to take before you actually start plugging anything into the interface. I know the interface is always the most exciting part. Looking at the cool widgets and the cool dashboards it's fun. But you need to really take into account, which is what we do at Peters, the forest view before you start working on the trees. And that doesn't mean you need to take 6 months to a year to do a ton of deep dive analysis. As I'll talk to you about in a little bit, we tend to take more of an agile methodology where we'll get an appreciation of what the forest should look like, but then we're quickly deploying trees in that forest such that people are getting quick wins. So you really need to define your audience, figure out what those key metrics are, figure out where that data lives, build your data model, select the visuals that are meaningful to that audience that you defined, and then test, evaluate, and continue tweaking it over time. So again, we tend to not follow the philosophy of long-term projects anymore. We are finding that building things more iteratively has been definitely a very exciting thing for our customers today. So the reason I take a moment to talk about defining your audience is I've also gone into a lot of BI projects lately where everyone focuses solely on the dashboard. But I think they forget that there's still this end user who's a business analyst and a number cruncher who wants Excel data. And if you don't find a way to address that need, they're going to go around your process and they will find a way to get that data into Excel because that's what they love to work in. One of the things I love about Power BI that I can actually show you is that you can put everything in the dashboard if that's where you want the information centralized, but they can still export that data to Excel if they want to number crunch it on their desktop. Now that's an optional feature where if you want to lock that down, where you don't want people exporting the data from the dashboards, you can completely do that as well. But I think you need to appreciate the fact that you will still have people in your organization that want data in Excel and want to crunch numbers. Another group of constituents you have within your organization could be managers or your executive team. So these traditionally are people that love those visuals, they love the dashboards, they really want a red, yellow, green, quick at a glance. How am I doing as an organization? And I want one drill down from there so I can find out if there's a red or a yellow, what's the problem, who do I need to call, what do I need to do to address it? So those would traditionally be the group of people that you would be building more of the dashboards for. Then you might have, we find a lot of organizations right now, we're helping with a lot of government reporting. And to be honest, once again, we're moving away from those dashboards and we're going back to more, I don't know how many of you remember green bar reports, but pretty static, standard, what they call SQL Server reporting services reports, which is kind of just that, it's not an Excel slice and dice spreadsheet, but it's just pretty much an output of report that you can use to literally print, copy, stamp, seal, and send off for any type of government, federal reporting, financial reporting that you need to do. We also have a group of users that we're addressing more and more, which are your end line workers who might have iPads or different types of mobile devices such that they need to have analytics and data information right there on their fingertips. We've done this a lot, quite a bit lately in manufacturing, where they're going to need the end line managers to have production data or quality data right at their fingertips while they're out there working in the field. And finally, last but not least, and I'm sure you have many other constituents within your organization, depending on your line of business, but you also have your mobile workforce, whether it's people working at home or people that travel for a living who, once again, are going to need information about customers, products, services at their fingertips as they're working out in the field. So the next stage, as I mentioned, once we've identified who our key audience is within the organization, is to identify those key metrics. I think this kind of to some people seems like a no-brainer, but for some people, they don't necessarily think in this way, and such that these need to be quantifiable measures to gauge performance or progress. Not all metrics are KPIs. Some people go overkill with the KPIs and will have hundreds of KPIs within the organization. That's not the best strategy necessarily, because KPIs should be vital signs of your organization and should be very focused. You could have tons and tons and tons of metrics, but you should have KPIs that are quantifiable measurements that are very data-driven. They have standard formulas, they're actionable, and they're directional. These are the key things, the top 5, the top 10, the top 20, if you will, that when you sit down as an organization, that is your lifeblood of your organization. So you really should identify those up front, and those should be some of your key focus areas when you first build out your business intelligence solution. And a strategy to build them is to use SMART goals. I know SMART goals is something we probably have all learned in college or school, but I think people kind of forget that over time when they start to deploy these solutions to the organization, and the fact that those KPIs and those metrics should be very specific. Because we're going to be very data-driven within a business intelligence solution, they also need to be measurable, such that we're going to be able to quantify that with the data within the database. I think this is something that's very important too, because we can have some qualitative data out there that we're working with, but for the most part from BI and analytics, we're going to be working all with numbers and quantitative data. They should be achievable, so they obviously should be the goals and objectives that you're trying to achieve or you're feasibly able to achieve as the organization. They should be relevant, and they should be timely and time-based. So for example, you'll have yearly or monthly or quarterly or daily types of milestones that you're wanting excuse me, to achieve as part of this, such that when you're looking at them within the business intelligence solutions or the tools, you're able to easily track them and monitor those goals as time goes on. So now that we've done all of that, you can build. We're going to now locate your data. That can also be challenging because I've worked with a lot of companies too where we'll look at an existing process and we'll try to move that over to Power BI, and they may or may not know where those data sources are actually located, or there could be a lot of manual entry of data that they're using in order to do analysis today. What we actually are starting to use a lot of, which is a whole different webinar, that can be a subsequent webinar to this actually and should be, is we're building a lot more Power Apps now with clients, where if they do have manual entry processes that happen today, you essentially can build forms that they can use on mobile devices, on tablets, on websites, where they could enter the data, again, especially in the manufacturing where you're on the line, they could be entering production quality data, any type of statistics or information that they want in real time, and those will actually feed right back into the data warehouse or the tabular model or whatever data structure we end up building. And then that way we also move some of the manual processes of data manipulation out to help ensure some higher data quality as part of that process. So once you've located your data, here's where usually we come in to help organizations to create a model for easy analysis, because again, the dashboard building, as I'm going to show you in just a minute, is really, really easy via Power BI. It's usually the blending of that data and presenting it to users in a meaningful way, because, for example, you don't need everything out of your ERP. You just need the data that's going to help you look at those KPIs or those metrics for your analysis. You then need to select meaningful and appropriate visuals, again, based off of the end user that you have already analyzed and figured out what they need. So you have to decide if you need charts and graphs or static reports, or if you need to have information in Excel. And then you start testing and deploying and evaluating and tweaking over time. So it continues, as you can see from the circle, to be an iterative process. And as I mentioned, so what we focus on when we start building these solutions is 4 key focus areas. First, a solid foundation. We always look at the forest view before we start building the trees so that we can build a scalable and robust platform. And I'm finding more and more that we're deploying these platforms in Azure because they're cheaper and they're easier to scale, and then you don't have to maintain the back-end infrastructure of them. We also make sure that it's easy for users to connect and manage the data both on premises and in the cloud, because again, this Power BI solution is going to allow your users to access these dashboards anytime, anywhere from any type of device. So it's going to be very important that we're going to also be able to connect into those data in real time from anywhere. Again, end user assets, we're very important about that. Also, from a peace of mind standpoint, we help provide a comprehensive security solution around your data. I'll talk to you in just a second about Power BI and how it sources data, but I would also encourage you, if you haven't attended some of our security webinars that talk about some of our security solutions and how we actually provide security is very important. But I think a lot of organizations, even though people are much more cloud friendly nowadays, because again, it's easy and it's cheap, still get nervous about exposing that data, that potential sensitive information or data where it might actually leak out accidentally to customers, or it might get to the wrong employee. So we also try to make sure that we have a good security solution around that, such that only the people that should have access to that information gain access to that information. So as I mentioned, we do all this with Power BI, which is what I'm going to present to you from a demonstration solution shortly. The nice thing about the Power BI solution is it's very, very easy from an analysis authoring standpoint. I will show you Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop is free. You can download it right after this webinar. If you've never worked with Power BI Desktop before, I'd be happy to send you a link on how to do that. Power BI is wonderful too, because it has on-demand training and webinars and videos, and they show you how easy it is to build out the front-end visualizations as part of it. But what I love about the Power BI stack compared to some of the other tools, because I've worked all over my career in business intelligence, is that Power BI and the Microsoft stack allows you to work with both on-premises data as well as pretty much any data that's out in the cloud. And I think that's important because some people, I know I keep harping on manufacturing today for some reason, but I've worked with some customers where they have customized solutions on premises that they can't move to the cloud. And so they need to be able to work with that on-premises data just as much as they would need to be able to work with data that's in the cloud. However, the nice thing is that Microsoft decided to play nice with the ecosystem, and they can pretty much allow you to plug into any non-Microsoft cloud data, which I'll show you as well. And so usually we work with customers, depending on the size and scope, to very often lately leverage Azure, but this could be on premises as well, to build either a data warehouse, or Microsoft has a specific solution called tabular models that essentially is going to massage out and manipulate that data into an easy to consume, user-friendly way, where they can again render this information in the cloud via Power BI. They can use SQL Server reporting services. They have experiences and opportunities in web, mobile, and now Microsoft Power Apps is pretty much where a lot of people are moving. However, one caveat to this is that I am seeing a lot of confusion right now because Microsoft started touting for a while. They're like, there's a free version of this available, and people got very, very excited. Yes, there is a free version versus Power BI Pro. However, it's very limited on functionality. If you just want to use desktop on your own, and you maybe want to share Power BI files with users internally where they're doing their own physical data refresh, that's not very scalable to enterprise, but it works. That is all free. If you want the real features like emailing, workspaces, online analysis, being able to do peer-to-peer sharing, real-time refresh of data, all of that is going to require Power BI Pro licensing. Or you can use either Power BI Pro licensing, which you can see here is $9.99 per user per month, and for people to collaborate and share, Pro licenses need to go to Pro licenses. Capacity pricing, or the reason we're doing a lot of Power BI with clients too is that many people move to E5 licensing for enhanced security and other functionalities and features, and it's actually included as part of that. So if you have E5 licensing and you're not using Power BI, be aware that that's part of your licensing and something that is available to you in Office 365, and we'd be happy to help explore that in your environment if needed. One more thing I just want to talk about briefly before I go over to the demonstration is that, to the point of free, there was a very exciting trend that happened with Power BI for a brief period of time where people got excited about this concept called Power BI Embedded, if you had heard of that before, where essentially you can create Power BI workspace collections, and you can deploy them for your customers. You can put them on your website in a variety of different places, and everyone thought these were free. So these are now transitioning over to apps, and Microsoft is retiring these workspace collections, and they're essentially pay as you go because the apps are going to actually be Power BI via Azure as a platform as a service solution. So you can embed reports and dashboards in applications for your customers or for internal use. However, you're paying as people consume that via Azure. So it ends up not really being free. You're not paying for it at the front end, but you pay for it in the back end. Now, depending on how many customers, clients, consumers you have, it's a fraction of the cost. So it can scale. But it's something we can do a side-by-side comparison for you to help with that. Now, as a good partner to many of our customers who got very upset about this, we have found ways to work around that, such that you can still publish to web or publish to SharePoint. There's some limitations on the free functionality. If this is something you're interested in exploring, that's a long conversation in and of itself, so we'd be happy to have a one-off conversation to explain what the differences are and how you can do some workarounds to that. But if you are using workspace collections today via Power BI embedded, be aware that they are retiring that, and you have until the end of this year to move to apps. So that being said, I'm going to take the remainder of this time to kind of move over to a demonstration of the solutions. You may have seen some of these before, but I wanted to take an opportunity to talk through just some of the features and functionality that you have through the Power BI tool. And then again, open up an opportunity for some questions before everyone breaks and runs for their lunch today. Let me share my desktop. So this is the Power BI desktop solution. So you can, again, download this from Microsoft right after we get off this call. You could multitask it while we're on this call, but I would appreciate it if you didn't do that. And it's free, and it's very easy to be able to create visualizations in the solution. And to be honest, if you're authoring, this is the tool that everyone uses for creating the visualizations that they'll then publish, as you can see here, publish to Power BI on the web. So within this, what's really nice and easy about this is it's your familiar Microsoft ribbon. If you haven't seen Power BI Desktop before, let me unpin that there so you can see the top here. So you have, all of the different types of tabs you're used to. You have a common look and feel of that ribbon. Over here, you'll see all the different visualizations and different types of functionality to be able to create the reports. And then here, you'd see all of the fields that you have available to you based off of your data source to be able to create different types of reports. So on Power BI Desktop, you essentially connect to the data. So you can get a variety of different data sources here that you'd work with. Some people will mock this out using Excel files and then deploy it using the actual data connections. You can connect into servers, you can connect onto web feeds, OData feeds. I will show you more of these when we get over to the Office 365 version of this. And then in here, you can actually do modeling within the tool itself. So if you're not going the Uber data warehouse route, and you're just blending a few simple sources, maybe you're doing this for a pilot or to play around, you can click on the query editor, and you can see here what I'm using for our example today is just a basic educational dashboard, because I figured that would be something most people could relate to. It looks at undergraduate and graduate levels, different types of information about students and enrollment levels. And here's my basic data from the spreadsheet that I'm working with just to mock the dashboard out. But you can transform the data right within the Power BI query editor. So if you're familiar with it and you know that you want to change data, rename data, replace values, maybe you want to reformat, maybe you want to run some statistics. Maybe here you want to actually use R scripts, if you're familiar with that, to be able to do predictive analytics. You can also add columns to the data. If you had multiple data sources, you can blend columns of the data. So it's a really user-friendly way of actually playing around with your data. Now, if you're looking at this and this is very scary to you and you're like, no, this is not my jam, I am not a data manipulator, that's why typically we will build a model where you can just plug into a SQL Server database or data source or tabular model such that these fields will all come over for an end user or a report builder. They don't have to think about data modeling. They just see very easy to understand language names of what types of things they want to use as they build their dashboards. Here in the Power BI desktop, you aren't building dashboards per se, you're building reports that will then get aggregated up into a dashboard in Office 365. So here you can see for the fall census enrollment I have for this educational report, they've decided they wanted to build trends over time for census enrollment. They wanted to look at things like class level based off of terms. And there's a table here too of just blank data for enrollment by major. Building these is so simple, which is why we don't do a lot of this. The end users do that. So for example, here we can really quickly look at, let's see, college by ID count, which is a calculated measure. And over here you can see the College of Arts and Sciences and the numbers that are coming back. And I quickly, with one click, can turn this into a pie chart. So I see how many counts of students there are based off of each of the schools and what those percentages are. Easily, I can add a slicer to this to be able to filter down by, let's say, gender. So I can, and this doesn't look pretty at this point, you'd want to move things around, but in the interest of time, I'm just going quickly. So now I only want to look at all the males and what their percentages are within the colleges. So you can see how you can just very quickly build out reports and dashboards, and there's functionality to change colors, to put headers. You see that you can add buttons, you can add images if you want to put your company logo on the pages, text boxes, freeform text, all of those types of things. Very, very, very easy to do. What else is really fun about this solution is that you can have that interactivity within all of the different charts and graphs. So if I click on senior, here within just Power BI dashboard or Power BI desktop, before I even deployed it anywhere else, I can see that interactivity of the data and how my end user is going to experience it. So you can see all of that information right here in the dashboard and kind of get it looks kind of clunky out here because you're an authoring tool, but at least you get a sense of what that end user experience is going to look like. I think another fun thing that you can do with the solution, as you saw here, I have interactivity between all my charts and graphs. You can also build in drill functionality that I think people forget that they can do, such that if I turn on drill down, I'm focused now on this chart, and if I drill into it, notice none of the other data pieces changed. I'm just drilling in specifically to this one data point, such that none of the other data is changing. So that's something else that's really great functionality within the solution. And I think also one thing you're going to maybe notice here, if you haven't played with Power BI in a while, is I know I'm being recorded, but I will admit Microsoft was a little late to the game on having pretty good visualizations when it came to mapping functionality. But as you can see, they're using Bing now, and they have other geo mapping, such that you can get pretty specific if you wanted to map out. Again, for this education, maybe I have all the high school districts on a map. Maybe I have all my plant locations on a map. The map functionality is definitely much better than it used to be when the solution first came out. The other thing, though, is because there's a wonderful community networked on the Microsoft solutions, is that people are now also creating custom visuals. You can create your own, or you can get them from the marketplace. And I love showing this one because it's just kind of fun, but there's actually this aquarium visual, which is completely meaningless, but people are building really cute widgets out, such that now I hover over this fish and I see my seniors and I see my sophomores and I see my graduates. And if nothing else, and you have Power BI desktop and you'd like to download the fish widget just to have something soothing on your desktop during the middle of your workday, they have a really cool fish widget. But there's some really neat things that people have created with time slicers. They've created different types of enrollments. So there's a lot of things that you can get that are actually just outside of even the basic charts and graphs that Microsoft offered. And just out of the box, you can see there's pie charts, donut charts, heat maps, line graphs, bar charts, all the common types of things that you would want to see as part of the functionality. So once you're feeling good about what you've built here on your Power BI desktop, now you're going to deploy it and publish it to Office 365. So if I come over here to my workspace, to my Office 365 environment, here is that exact same data in a dashboard format. And how did I create this dashboard format? Well, behind this dashboard, what actually gets published to Power BI are each of the reports. So you can see the same reports that I had on my desktop over here in the Power BI Office 365 environment. What you do is you select key elements off of those reports that then bubble up into your dashboard. So for example, one of the things I don't have on my dashboard right now is total headcount enrollment. You use this little pin to then pin that visual to your dashboard, and it's going to ask me, do you want to go to an existing dashboard or do you want to go to a new dashboard? And I say, okay, I'd like to pin this to my existing dashboard. What I also love, yet sometimes don't love, about Office 365 is the fact you constantly get new features and functionality. So you may have seen the pop-up that just happened when I pinned that visual to my dashboard. It asked me, do I want to optimize it for phone? That's a new functionality that just came out. So there's always new things that are being added. But if I come back here to my higher education dashboard, now I will see that new enrollment by term and status pinned to my dashboard, and I can move it around and do different things with it if I want to as part of my chart and graph. So it's really, really easy to be able to add tiles and to be able to aggregate information about your different data as well. So I'm going to move away from the education data for a minute, and I want to go to a different sample that I have, sales and marketing, just to show you some different features and functionality. Notice here they have a couple of different KPIs, again, not too many, but a little bit more, where this is something else that you might have traditionally within your organization, is looking at sales over time, units that you're producing, maybe units by manufacturing and region. You can see here there's a different type of heat map. Some of the other cool features out here is that users might come into the system and they might have a question about their data, but there isn't exactly a report or dashboard that does that today. And they don't necessarily know how to create their own report or dashboard. That's not a problem. Maybe they want to know what were sales by region. And so what Power BI does is it goes, okay, I'm going to go mine your data and I'm going to show you what were sales by region. And the user can easily say, oh, okay, look, east, central, west, this is great. That's kind of an ugly chart, so maybe I want to make that into a donut. And so quickly they can pop open the visualization tab, turn that right over into a donut. Maybe they're like, let's go down here. Maybe they want the East Coast to be that color and the central region to be this color and the West region to be that color. Because maybe that fits your branding colors better, because Microsoft's just going to kind of push back its standard color template to you. If they like it, and it's something that they're going to want to look at over time, you can actually easily pin that visual right back to your dashboard, and that visual will be there for them moving forward. So it's a really neat, easy feature for them to be able to ask questions of the data, mines the data for you, and provides that visual that you can then pin back over to your dashboard. So I'm going to exit Q&A for a minute. One of the other features that I really, really love about Power BI is that sometimes you want to learn more about your data, but maybe you aren't someone who's done, analytical models, or you don't understand statistics. So there's a really neat functionality in here called View Insights. And so here I'm looking at these total units year to date by manufacturer and region. So this is a nice little heat map. I see, obviously the bigger the units, based off, if I hover over the data, you can see this based off the heat map. Once I got down here, tinier units. But what Insights is going to do is it's going to take you down the path of telling you more about your data for you. So here I can see Van Artsel has noticeably more total units year to date for 2014, and it shows me a graph to help prove that out. Also, let's see what else. Urban has noticeably more total units year to date for 2014. Great, that's very helpful. Units seem to be trending upwards, also very helpful. Sentiment by region, there's an even sentiment for region. So as you can see, it's bringing the data together for you in ways you might not have considered before, and presenting you with other visuals and other ways of looking at the data. And if you, once again, if you're interested in any of these charts, it says, sales has outliers. Maybe I want to focus in on this one, and I want to drill into this data a little bit more to take a look at some of those outliers. And again, if I feel like this is going to be a meaningful dashboard for me moving forward, I can pin that visual to my dashboard, and I can utilize it moving forward. And what's interesting too is, if you notice, once I clicked into that visual, Now it's giving me additional insights on that specific visual. So here I'm looking at sales by date, and the sales here, they're looking by categories now: rural, urban, mixed, youth, and all of those types of things. I'm going to exit focus mode here. I want to show you a couple more things really quick. I know I'm running out of time, and I want to be able to make sure I have some time for questions if needed. As promised, one of the other things that you can do is export to Excel. So if you opt into this functionality for your end users, they can easily download this information to Excel. And you can see here that's all the manufacturing data with the units and the regions. So now they have free access in Excel to be able to slice and dice this information, maybe bring it together in new ways that they haven't done before. Maybe they want to do some formatting. The limitation on this, which is actually a very good thing, is this is coming out of Power BI into Excel. You don't push data back up to Power BI. So anything they manipulate here, don't worry, it's not affecting your data, it's not affecting your database. It lives out here in an area where they can manipulate and play around with it. But again, you'll notice that these are my workspaces. So you can also put security and privileges around this to only have certain people have certain access to certain data within the organization, and you can lock out certain functionality for those as well. And we have different ways of deploying things too, such that we can make sure that people are only maybe in a look-only view. Like maybe you want customers to only look at data and to not be able to drill through data, or to be able to get to the underlying root data, and maybe they just look at some high-level reports and dashboards here. I would also share with the fact, I said I would promise to tell you all the different data services that Microsoft works with. You see here at the bottom, there is a Get Data button. I can get information from my organization. I can get data from files and databases to connect to in Azure. One thing I do want to mention, as I did say earlier, we have the ability to access on-premises data. That is through a solution called the Power BI Gateway, which is a secure pipe to the cloud, such that when you exit out of that working with that data in Power BI, it's a zero footprint solution. So it's not leaving data up in the cloud if you don't want that data on cloud and you want it only on premises. But it uses all of the security encryption features behind it to make sure that that transmission of data or that usage of data from on premises is secure as part of that. So we would configure that as part of any of those solutions. But as you can see, any online apps or services, they have a whole list of these that's available. And to be honest, this keeps changing all the time. I've had a lot of customers ask for things like they're using Project Online. I want to plug into it. Great, it's out here. Jira, a lot of people are using that for tracking on projects. GitHub, people are using things like MailChimp for mailing within the organization. Asana, another great tool for project management, especially on Agile projects. MailChimp, like a whole bunch of solutions. And again, you'll notice these are not just Microsoft solutions. They're playing very nice with other people in different types of hooks. So there's a really easy way to work with any of that content, if you need to work with other data within the cloud. So we are at 10:46. I think in the interest of time, I want to be able to stop presenting this for a moment and to kind of come back and see if we have any questions